Okay, here's a wild thought for you. Have you ever wondered if you could power a city with something as weird as human screams? It sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, right? But today, we're going to take this totally absurd idea and apply some real-world physics to it, just to see what we find out.
So let's get right to it. Our central question today is a big one.
So, could you really do it? Could you power an entire city using nothing but the sound of screams? It sounds ridiculous, I know. But the fascinating part is breaking it down with actual science. To figure this out, we really only need two key pieces of info. First, how much energy is even in a scream? And second, how much energy does a city actually need to run?
Okay, first things first. Let's analyze our power source. From a physics perspective, what is a scream anyway?
Well, at its core, all sound is just a form of energy. It's called acoustic energy, and it travels in waves. So a scream? That's just a really loud, sudden, and kind of emotional burst of that exact energy.
So, how much power are we talking about here? If you let out a good, solid scream, how much power does it actually generate? Well, on average, it produces about 1,000th of a watt. Yep, that's 0.001.
And let's just be crystal clear here. That is an incredibly tiny amount of power. I mean, for comparison, a single one of those old-school incandescent light bulbs, that needs about 60 watts to light up. A scream doesn't even come close. It's not even in the same ballpark.
To make this a little easier to work with, let's stop thinking in terms of power and start thinking in terms of total energy. Let's say you could somehow sustain a powerful scream for a full 90 seconds, which, let's be honest, is basically impossible. You would generate a grand total of about 80 joules of energy.
So, what can 80 joules actually do? Well, all that effort, a minute and a half of nonstop screaming, gives you just enough energy to warm up a single spoonful of tea by a few degrees. That's it. So yeah, our fuel source here is incredibly weak.
Okay, so we've established that a scream is a pretty pathetic power source. But how does it stack up against what we're trying to power? Now we have to look at the other side of the equation, the enormous, frankly insane energy appetite of a modern city.
This is where the sheer scale of our challenge really starts to come into focus. I mean, what does it actually take to run everything? The lights, the subways, the data centers, all the coffee shops, for millions of people for just one day?
All right, brace yourself. If we take a large city as our example, the daily energy consumption is around 240 trillion joules. Just look at that number on the screen. It's almost impossible to really wrap your head around a number that big.
All right, we have our two key data points. We have the tiny amount of energy from a single scream and the absolutely colossal amount of energy a city burns through. It is time to put them head to head.
And here it is, laid out side by side. 80 joules versus 240 trillion joules. You know, it's not even like comparing apples and oranges. It's more like comparing a single atom to the entire sun. The difference in scale is just staggering.
And that's really the only way you can describe this. These two numbers, they feel like they operate under completely different laws of physics in completely separate universes.
So, after all of that, we are finally ready to deliver the verdict on our original question. And let me tell you, the final number is even more absurd than you might be imagining.
So, could you power a city with screams? The scientific answer is a resounding, absolute no. But the fun part isn't just the no. It's discovering exactly how impossible it truly is.
Get this, to power a major city for just 1 hour, you would need 3.1 trillion people. And they'd all have to be screaming at the top of their lungs nonstop for that entire hour, with every single bit of their sound energy captured perfectly.
Just let that sink in for a second. There are about 8 billion people on our entire planet right now. You would need the population of more than 300 Earths, all screaming in perfect unison just to power one city for 60 minutes.
But look, this whole thought experiment was never really about the practicality of screaming for power. Of course it wasn't. It's a fun, kind of weird way to illustrate a much deeper, more important point about the world we live in.
The true lesson here is getting a real, gut-level understanding of the astronomical amount of energy our civilization uses every single day. It's a quantity so vast that our own biological outputs are, well, laughably small in comparison.
So here's the thought I want to leave you with. If it takes trillions of screams to barely even make a dent in our energy needs,
What does that say about the true scale of our modern energy footprint? Really makes you think, doesn't it? Thanks for joining me for this one.